Well, a very good morning to you, Des, and I'm sure all eyes are on the Pietermaritzburg High Court as that court case resumes again today. And it's quite correct what you're saying. We are going to see today whether the journalist, Media 24 journalist Karyn Maughan, will be successful in having that application brought by the former President Jacob Zuma set aside. You would know in the last court sitting we were here and we saw friends of the court apply to be amigos, friends of the court being SANEF, as well as the Helen Suzman Foundation, who are supporting Advocate Billy Downer and Karyn Maughan in this case. And that particular court case was also, the judgment on that was reserved by the judge. So today we are imagining that we'll resume with the matter at hand. And the matter that Karyn Maughan is bringing to this court is to say that there is no merit in this. She did not receive a nolle prosequi from the NPA to continue with this case, and that former President Jacob Zuma is found wanting, that this is a witch hunt on her, as she's been reporting on this trial for 20 years. But just to break it all down for us and just to go a few steps back and talk to us about where we are here today and what we possibly could see playing out in court today, I am joined by legal analyst Melusi Xulu. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Xulu. So I want to jump a few steps back and go back to this application, private prosecution application brought by former President Jacob Zuma for Billy Downer, the lead advocate in the corruption arms deal case, but also Media 24 journalist Karyn Maughan. Now, one application brought, but Karyn Maughan saying that she did not receive a nolle prosequi from the NPA, so this case has no merit. Let's start with the accused number one in this matter. Does she have a case at all?
For accused number one, which is Advocate Billy Downer, well, if you remember in June 2022, which was last year, there was a nolle prosequi certificate which was granted by the NPA, in particular to Advocate Billy Downer. But it was not specifically mentioned if there was any co-accused that was going to be added. It was basically based on the case that was opened against Advocate Billy Downer, and then the person that is alleged to have been working with him in this alleged criminal offense is obviously Ms. Maughan. But there was no mention of her in that particular certificate. So for Advocate Billy Downer, he has raised three things. He said this is an abuse of court process, and secondly, he said there's no jurisdiction. If you remember, that's what his advocate Wim Troncroft stated. And lastly, he says that the former president, Mr. Zuma, has no standing in terms of Section 7 of the Criminal Procedure Act, which is based on private prosecution. So he's raising those issues and saying this matter should be set aside. That's what they kind of gave us a clue last year on the 10th of October. So today, they want to ventilate all those issues, including the issues that are raised by Ms. Maughan. We will not obviously have the decision bank given today because there will have to be arguments that will be heard on both sides. And what will be interesting today, we'll also hear why the prosecution is saying this case must continue against accused number one and accused number two. So they will raise a defense to say there is a case to answer and it's based on this particular legislation. So we have to hear what will happen in court, but I don't think we'll have a decision being given today because this case has a lot of history. We're talking about a case that is related to another case, which is the arms deal, which goes back 20 years ago, So there are a lot of issues to be raised. There's been many applications that have been brought in other cases, so I do not see it being finalized today. But we will at least hear some arguments, and probably if there's a judgment, it might be given on another day.
And just picking up from the argument from Maughan is that when she received the papers or the documents from the prosecuting authority, it was actually already filed in court. Now, the former president is saying that that is not true, that she indeed had the medical record, the medical papers, before it was filed. And that is why we are here today. Now, she says that she received that on the 9th of August in the afternoon. And the court papers were filed in the afternoon. So that is the basis of the argument. With regard to the NPA not giving that certificate, the nolle prosequi, is there any, is it a watertight case? Has she got any, merit to say that, this is just a witch hunt, that I followed the right journalistic ethos, I received the court papers, which is in the public domain. Take us through that. Take us through the nollie prosequi and why the NPA would not hand.
Put the cart before the horse, but she raises a very interesting argument, because let's look at the general way in how the private prosecution must happen. If the person who's a complainant has a case, they take it to the police, they open a case, and they take it to the NPA to make a decision. Based on that accused, there will be a decision that we make specific to that accused. But what we see in June 2027, there's no mention of Ms. Maughan. There's nothing about her being a co-accused. But when it comes to courts, then she's added. So she might say, but this is like she's been saying, it's an infringement of her rights to freedom of expression, and she's being harassed. But we have to look at the fact that generally, how it must be done when there's a private prosecution. I think that is an interesting thing. So we will hear from the private prosecution team, why did they add it at a later stage? Because I was just mentioning to you earlier when we were busy discussing the case that if it was an afterthought, and this is my view, if it was an afterthought to add her, maybe they should have not brought the case to court, but maybe take the matter to the police again to add her, and to get that second nollie prosequi certificate. Then they would have joined the cases together, and then that argument about no nollie prosequi certificate would have fallen away. But we will see how the prosecution team, the private prosecution team, will raise the argument against it, because on the last occasion, I think they did not give us much, because this was not the hearing for that. So let's hear today what they will say, and then we will be able to analyze on that basis.
It's going to be a very interesting one, that's for sure.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Xulu, for breaking that down for us. Well, Desiree, I imagine it's going to be quite a lengthy, long day as we try and find out what exactly is going to happen in Maughan's case. As you heard there, it is a combined case, Billy Downer and Maughan, but Mr. Xulu breaking it down, saying that Maughan did not receive a nollie prosequi certificate from the NPA, and it remains to be seen whether that is going to be addressed today. She wants her particular case set aside and possibly thrown out of court, saying that this is just a witch hunt on her. She followed the right procedure. She received the documents only after it was filed at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We'll bring you all that information today. It's back to you, Desiree.